turns out the story is still changing. We have ourselves some word from Elliotte Friedman that goes over potential NHL Draft Lottery changes. We're going over this article over here on ProHockeyRumours.com, published yesterday, so I will leave a link in the description. NHL proposing changes to the Draft Lottery because it's Chris Johnston of Sportsnet who reports how the NHL appears to be changing the lottery once again, as detailed in a memo circulated to clubs yesterday. That's when the thing happened. The league has proposed several changes. Teams would now be limited to no more than 2 lottery wins in a 5-year period, and they would only be allowed to jump 10 spots with a win, and only 2 picks, instead of 3, will be determined with a lottery win. The changes are still subject to approval from the league's Board of Governors. The lottery changes, which would certainly make things more complicated if instituted, seem designed to prevent teams that barely miss the playoffs from winning the top spot, while also punishing teams that tear it all down to stay at the bottom of the league for several years. That 5-year period will be very important to remember for clubs in a rebuild, and could block them from even having a chance at some of the best incoming players. The rest of the article talks about how we had reports back in October saying that the Red Wings wanted to change the lottery and that there were other NHL teams that supported the Red Wings and saying, yeah, why did they get 4th, bro? This system is whack. They were really bad, and it's not like they actually tanked. They were just that bad. And they dropped from 1st overall to 4th overall. Well, we also had another update in this article as well, because Elliotte Friedman reported that most of the changes in the draft lottery will not take place until 2022, and any previous lottery victories will not be included, pretty much meaning that from 2022 and onwards, it will be a clean slate, and we will have the record starting from there. It also says that the 2021 lottery will indeed go down to 2 picks instead of 3, should these changes be approved. So, what exactly does this mean? Well, first off, 3 picks going down to 2 picks. That is a very big deal because for the longest time, the NHL Draft Lottery has mostly just been a draw for 1st overall. Teams have different chances at winning based on where they finished in the standings. The worse you do, the higher your odds. You know how it goes. And then after a team is drawn 1st overall, that is just it. The team moves up, and whoever wasn't winning, they move down a spot depending on where they finish in the standings. For example, in 2015, Buffalo finished last, which guaranteed them either 1st or 2nd overall, either Connor McDavid or Jack Eichel. Edmonton won the 1st overall pick, which is why they moved up to number 1. Buffalo dropped from 1 to 2, and that was it. Because of the McDavid thing, we actually moved from a system where it's only 1 lottery team to 3, where the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd overall picks would be drafted via lottery. Which is why you saw some good teams like Winnipeg in 2016 go up and win 2nd overall for Patrik Laine. You had 2 years ago the New York Rangers winning Kaapo Kakko. You had previous years where Miro Heiskanen went to the Dallas Stars, and you had all these other times where Colorado, they were last in 2017, they dropped from 1st to 4th. Detroit, they were last in 2020, and they moved from 1st to 4th. Because there are 3 lotteries done, and because none of these teams that were at the bottom ended up winning any of the lotteries. So, the new system proposes that instead of having 3 picks gone out there, it's only 2. So, the worst you could do in the draft lottery if you finish worst in the league is 3rd overall, instead of 4th. We also have a few other ideas over here that teams would only be allowed to jump up 10 spots with a draft lottery win. That's big because in the previous system, you had teams like Carolina, for example, winning 2nd overall and drafting Andrei Svechnikov, even though they were one of the best teams to actually not make the playoffs in the NHL that year. You had teams that were in the teens, the 12, 11, 13 range, actually finding their way into the draft lottery and having success. So, with this new system, the max you can go up is 10 spots. So, it appears that teams that are finishing 11th or 12th or 13th last wouldn't actually be given that opportunity to go up to 1st overall. I'm not sure how that would work if they would actually include these teams in the 1st overall lottery, maybe include them in a 2nd overall lottery, and that's it. If you're finishing, 13th last in the league, you're not included in a lottery in general, you're just staying where you are. That'd be really interesting to have a system where this league does not incorporate all the non-playoff teams into their draft lottery process because of these limits where you're only allowed to move up 10 spots, for example. And obviously the last one is the biggest one here. Teams would be limited to no more than 2 lottery wins in a 5-year period, which is really interesting because lottery wins, to me, that just means a lottery. There's a first overall lottery, a second overall lottery, and a third overall lottery done today. Under this new system, there's only going to be 2, a first overall and a second overall. So it would prevent teams from winning one of the 2 lotteries more than twice in 5 years, which guarantees that you're not going to have any triple offenders. Here are some examples of doubles that we have seen so far. Let's take it, for example, New Jersey. In 2017, the New Jersey Devils won the first overall pick. They picked Nico Hischier. 2 years later, hey, they pick Jack Hughes, 2019, first overall. The New York Rangers in 2019 drafted second overall in Kaapo Kakko. What do they do a year later? Hey, they draft first overall Alexis Lafreniere. Those are all lottery wins, quote-unquote. And so the new system would propose that each of these teams that win a lottery would only be allowed to win one other lottery for 5 years, and that is a crazy, crazy limitation to actually put out there on the teams. But you know what? I'm honestly kind of for it because it's pandemonium, it's madness. It's not the same teams every time getting these top picks. You could say, oh, but Lego, you're punishing the teams that are just bad. Well, okay, they're still going to be there. Let's say Detroit finishes last in the league for the next 3 years. They win first overall the next year. Okay, let's see how they do then. Then they win second overall, for example, and they're in a position where they actually went up. They were third last or fourth last in the league, but they went up to second overall. Things are actually a little bit interesting because this is a tweet from Thomas Strand saying that sources are suggesting to him that the 2 and 5 rule would only function so that teams can move up in the draft lottery twice in 5 years. So if a team has the worst record, they can still get the first or second overall pick over and over again. So if your team is legitimately just bad, in theory, you would still be able to get those first picks. But the limitations come when you're just outside of the worst team in the league territory and you jump up and you win the first overall pick. Like New York did, for example, in the most recent season where they were a playoff team that didn't end up doing anything in the playoffs and then they won the first overall pick. Cool. So it's mostly just preventing teams from jumping up in there several times in a row. But if you're still bad, you're protected in that you still have the right to stay there. Because this rule is only preventing teams from moving up. If you're already there in the first place and you win first or second overall, then okay, you're just kind of there by default. So that's a really interesting system, a really interesting kind of combination of the 2 systems that we have had before that honestly kind of align a little bit more to the side of allowing the teams that are legitimately just bad to be bad and to actually still have good lottery success afterwards, because if you're last in the league for several years in a row, you wouldn't technically be moving up in the draft lottery, you would just be staying where you are if you win any of these pieces. So it prevents the other teams that are actually pretty okay from winning several times, and I kind of like that now that you think about it like that. I kind of like it. It's kind of funny because I'm kind of cheering for the bad teams to just get good players because I don't want teams that are barely in the bubble being able to do it and get good players, get some of the top guys because they totally need them, right? But yeah, talk to me in the comments what you thought about this whole idea here. Obviously, this isn't really set in stone or anything. It's just rumors. It's just hearsay, a memo tossed around to other NHL teams that's discussing some potential changes. So talk to me about these changes. What do you think? Having lotteries done for only 2 of the picks at the top instead of 3. Having it so you can't move up more than 10 spots. And having it so that teams cannot move up more than twice in 5-year spans. Talk to me in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. Rosen99. And bye.